Hey, it's John from Tinderbox Arts. So this is going to be a review of a couple new tires I'll be mounting shortly on my bike. These are the Continental Road Attack 3. Now the reason I chose these tires are because of really the bike itself. It's a Triumph Bonneville. It's a 2010 model. And the tire sizes on this bike are a little bit oddball. You can get them, but they're not a super common size. Some people do change the size from the stock, but there's a limiting factor, which is the rim size. The width between the beads is fairly limiting, so there's not too much you can do. The stock rear size is 130/80/17, and the stock front size is 110/70/17, and I was able to get those stock sizes in this Continental tire. But some people will go up a size. For example, on the rear they'll do a 140/80. On the front they'll do a 120/70. And there's some other sizes you can use too. But I really have no reason to change from this stock size. The only problem was finding a tire that fit. And some of the tires that have been used in the past to replace the OEM tire just are no longer available. So this one was available. I could get it in the stock sizes, so that's why I chose it. Now the original one is a Metzler tire, a Z2, and in the front I ended up last time changing to a Z8. And honestly, I really don't have too much to complain about on these stock tires. They were expensive, but the Metzler tires were good. I never had a problem with grip in dry or wet. You can see I really don't have any chicken strips, and really the limiting factor there are the pegs more than the tire. There is one downside to the stock rear tire, which was it tended to have a flat spot in the middle here, and that's not because I did a lot of highway riding on this, because I really didn't. I did a lot of country back roads and that kind of thing, but this tire, the Z2, just tended to have a flat spot created there fairly quickly, like within a few thousand miles. So that was one downside of this tire. But I have to say, overall, I really can't complain. I got 9,500 miles out of this set. The previous set I also had stock, and I had 9,500 miles out of that as well. So I really can't complain about the stock tires. But they were expensive, and I decided I just wanted to try something a little bit different. And if I could get away from this flat spot here, that would be a plus too. So these Continental tires, I can see the rear tire right off the bat has more of a rounded profile right here to start with. So maybe that'll help, maybe it won't. These are a 2-compound tire. There's not an obvious, streak in the middle here, but I'm told it is 2 compounds, and the way they do this is to mix the rubber somehow so that it kind of gradually goes from one to the other. There's one other interesting thing about these tires. Most manufacturers use like an oily release agent in the forms when they make the tires, and that leaves a residue on the surface here that has to be worn in. That's why when you get motorcycle tires first mounted, you want to ride for 50 miles or 100 miles so that you wear that stuff off. Now this tire is a little bit different. They don't use a release agent, and I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but it has kind of a rough surface to start with, and I'm told you can basically just ride these right off the bat. Anyway, I'm going to get these mounted up and I'll do some riding, and then I'll come back to you with a review of what I think. I'm expecting it may be a little different as far as performance in the way it handles because of a different profile than the old tire. And that's, when you put a new tire on versus an old tire, even if it's the same one, same brand, same model, it's still going to be a little bit better because it's new and you have a perfect profile and all that. All right, I've had a chance to do some riding on these new tires, and I'm conflicted about how much I like them or don't like them, and I'll explain why here. So when I first left on the first trip, the tires were fresh, and ordinarily I'd take some care to scrub them in. But the manufacturer claims you don't really need to scrub these in at all. They're basically ready to go because they don't use a release agent like other tire manufacturers do. Nonetheless, I left with some caution, but honestly, I must have got 10 or 15 feet out of the driveway as I was turning out of the driveway, and it started to slip on me. So I was like, oh boy. So I did take some time, maybe 50 miles, to scrub these in, and made an effort to do so. So the first ride, I wasn't super thrilled with them. They felt squirrely or squirmy, and you know, I was a little hesitant to, wondering how much I'm really going to like these. Now in subsequent riding, it's better. It's much better. Now the tires do like to be hot. That much I figured out pretty quick. When they're cold, you know, the grip just isn't as good, and they do warm up pretty nicely. The previous tire, as you saw, had quite a flat spot here. So this rounded profile here certainly felt different. The turn-in, especially, it didn't feel as sure-footed to me. And there was especially one zone of the tire, like, you know, if you're going straight in this middle zone, it was fine. And later I found out, you know, on this end area here, it's fine. But somewhere in this area right here, if you're leaned over in that section, it felt a little squirrely. And sometimes if you really load up the tire in a hard turn, it felt like it was slipping. A little bit like going over a tar snake on a road. Now, I haven't done a whole bunch of riding, but you can see, I hope on camera, you know, my chicken strip is right about there. Now, previously, I would touch down on my pegs. I would scrape peg if I got anywhere near this area here. Now this is a taller tire, especially because it's brand new, so I'm able to lean over a little bit more now. So I'm within, whatever, eighth of an inch, about an eighth of an inch to the very end there. Now I haven't done a whole bunch of riding on the extreme like that, but enough to know what's going on. Now there's a S-turn near me that's very famous. It's a good place to test because we ride it a lot, and it's very predictable turn, so you know. And previously, I could go around that turn on this bike at about 60 miles an hour, and that's where I would scrape peg. So I was going around that turn, and you know, I didn't feel great about it, but I was fine. I wasn't sliding or anything. But then I glanced down, and I was actually doing 62 or 63. So maybe that kind of makes a liar out of me in the sense that even though I didn't feel that great about the tire, I was actually going a little faster than I had before. Now I know what you're going to say. If you're riding like that, this is the wrong bike for doing it. You should get a sport tire, yada yada yada. All that is true. Nonetheless, you know, I felt pretty good about the old tire, and even though that was older technology, it did not have. It was the Metzlers Z2. It did not have the dual compound. You know, it's an older tire, an older design, but I felt pretty good about that tire. I can't really complain about it. So this, you know, I'm conflicted about. I think maybe as time goes on, I'll probably get used to the profile. So I'm going to blame some of this on just the fact that it's a new profile I'm not used to. In other areas, like I went over some bridges that had the metal grates, you know, across the whole bridge. And, you know, some tires when you ride on those kind of bridges, you get very squirrely, you're kind of back and forth. This was not the case. These were very stable over the metal grates. I really have no complaints about that. I've not ridden in the wet yet, so I can't really comment on that. But there's all sorts of, you know, tread here, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. So the old Metzler tires, I got 9,500 miles on. They were pretty worn out by then, but, you know, nonetheless, two sets I've gotten that kind of mileage. Are these tires going to give me that kind of mileage? You know, I don't know. I don't know enough yet to comment on that. So, you know, as time goes on, I'll try to leave a comment in the comment section of this video and let you know how things are going. But I have no reason to think I won't get a significant amount out of it. It does have a dual compound. That should help. You know, I don't want to come across as too negative because I do think it's a good tire. I don't really have any major complaints about it. I was just trying to point out some of the things that I noticed on my first rides. All right, one last addition here on the end. You know, I'm going out on another ride, and now the tires are definitely coming into their own. They feel much better. I haven't so far gotten that slip that I talked about earlier, so I'm starting to think that maybe it's just a matter of wearing these in, which, like I said, you're not supposed to need to do that, but it definitely seems to be making a difference. So I'm more confident on these now. I don't have the problems that I was talking about earlier so far on this ride. So I think I'm going to say these are about equal to the Metzlers, maybe in performance, maybe a little bit less, but I haven't tested them in water yet, so I don't know about that. But, you know, for the price, they're cheaper than the Metzlers, and they come in the right size, so I guess I'm upgrading. I'm a little less conflicted about them now, and I feel a little bit better about the performance, so I'm going to say they're a decent tire.